Got this Hyundai Elantra here. It's here for a few different things. The first thing is the turn signal, which as you can see I already replaced the bulb, and it needed a high beam bulb and I already replaced that bulb also. The next thing is a transmission temperature sensor. And at the dealer they gave him a diagram of where it's located, which sucks because it looks like the transmission pan needs to come off to get to it. It's actually right there. See the one that's circled? And the pan on this car isn't on the bottom of the engine. The pan is vertical. In case you're wondering why we're changing the transmission temperature sensor, it's because the owner has been getting these codes for quite some time. And the transmission actually shifts very hard, and when you put it into reverse or drive, it shifts hard. And he believes that these codes have something to do with it, so he wants to throw a new temperature sensor at it. Alright, so I pulled up some data for the temperature sensor and look what it's reading. -34. Yep, I'd say unless we have a broken wire somewhere, I'd say we have a bad sensor. Okay, so I got the air box out of the way, and the first thing I noticed is animal droppings. See it right there? A little bit right there too. So do we have a broken wire somewhere? I don't know. Before I tear, and here goes the vertical pan I was talking about. It's like made out of plastic. But before I start tearing into this, I'm gonna try to do a quick visual inspection and see if I see any broken wires. Alright, so I took off the transmission connector, looking for possibly green crusties. I don't see anything. And down there on the other end, it looks pretty good to me. Now I looked around, I could not find any signs of rodent damage. If I had a wiring diagram, I would try to find out which pin right here is for the temperature sensor and maybe grab some resistance values or try to do something before I tear into this, but I don't have any of that information. Alright, so I'm draining out the trans fluid. Just comes out that bolt right there to 24 millimeter. And this fluid is relatively new, just I don't know, a few months old. We changed it. So the trans oil cooler lines, they connect right here, and I just took the clamps off and slid the hoses off. As you can see, I just kind of tucked them away back here to get them out of the way. Next thing I want to remove is this rubber hose right here. There's another clamp right there, so we're going to remove that clamp just to get this out of the way. Alright, so I removed this shield that was pretty much covering the transmission. So with that out of the way, you can see we have this vertical pan completely exposed, and I'm going to start removing all of these 10 millimeter bolts going all the way around it. So I pretty much removed all of the bolts, and one of them ended up breaking, which is the very one at the bottom. It's the very first one I touched. The way it felt when it first started to turn, it was very rough, and I just knew it was going to break. The ones on the bottom are way more likely to break because they're closer to the ground, so obviously corrosion. The ones up top and on the sides of the pan, they come off without a problem. So I'm gonna see if I could get that one out because only the head broke off, so some of the stud is still right here inside the transmission housing. But this thing is pretty much loose. Let's see if it kind of peels away a little bit. Might have to get some sort of pry bar. Yeah, I can see it's starting to move. Alright, let me get this off. Just use a small pry bar, and the pan just popped right off. Shouldn't be too bad as long as you got all the bolts out, and you can see it's separated now. So at this point, if you got everything off of the pan, it should come right off. Oh, and don't forget to keep your pan underneath it, because even though you drained it, as soon as you break the seal, it's still gonna drip out and leak like I got here. Got a little bit of a mess on the floor here. And there goes the pan. Now that we got the pan off, here goes what we're looking for right there. So let's go ahead, unplug it, and take off that 10mm, and we'll take the sensor off. So I got the sensor off. It just comes off with the one 10mm bolt that's holding it in place, and I just used a 90-degree angle pick like this, a small one, and just kind of got in here and pried between the harness and the sensor to release it, because it has locking tabs right here. So that's what I found that works to get it off. And keep in mind, you don't want to damage the harness. What you want to do is pry on the plastic of the actual sensor. You can see the two holes right there, that's where it locks on. As you can see, I got the new sensor installed, and now it's time to clean up everything and put it back together. You really want to try to clean up this mating surface right here where the gasket's gonna sit. So I'm gonna do my best. Now this bolt that snapped, I thought more would be sticking out so I could try to grab it, but there really isn't much sticking out right there. So I guess that's not gonna happen. I think what I'm gonna end up having to do, just to make sure it doesn't leak, is I'm gonna put a very thin layer of silicone down here, not along the whole pan, just the bottom side right here, especially because of this one broken bolt. But obviously make sure you clean the surface. And another thing I would recommend is, when you go to the dealer, see if this O-ring or gasket is available, the one that goes on the pan itself. We did not think about this initially, so we did not get a new gasket, and now we're stuck having to deal with cleaning this one up and hoping that it's gonna seal. But ideally, you would want a new gasket for this. Alright, so I got the pan on. Get some light here. You can see the pan is in place, and everything that's important is reconnected, like the harness for the transmission, reconnected the battery. And at this point, I'm not going to start the engine or anything. In fact, I haven't even put the fluid in the transmission yet. But all I want to do at this point is reconnect my scanner, and let's go check that temperature sensor and see if we see a difference. Basically, at this point, we at least don't want to see negative 34 degrees. Okay, so this is good news. Got the data pulled up here, and 114 degrees Fahrenheit. If it would focus, there you go. So that's great. It tells us that everything's working, the new sensor is working, and most importantly, it tells us we do not have a broken wire. So even though we found mouse droppings on top of the transmission, it wasn't a case of a broken wire, it was just a bad sensor. So that's good. At this point, if you put in your new sensor and if you would still see like your negative 34 degree, then something is wrong. You have a broken wire somewhere. But it's all good. So yeah, really happy to see this. And once this is done, I'm gonna take it out for a test drive, and let's see if that hard shifting is gone. Alright, so it's actually the next day, and I just came down here to inspect everything, and it looks like there's nothing dripping or any signs of fluid getting out. Now, I did not fill it up yet, but still, there's still some fluid in the transmission, and it could have possibly leaked out if we had a major leak here, but it looks pretty good. I went ahead and tightened up the drain bolt, and now I'm just going to go ahead and clean everything with brake clean to clean up your area. As for up top, it's time to refill the transmission with the fluid that came out, because the fluid, now this is a great opportunity to put new trans fluid in your car, but we just put this trans fluid in not too long ago, so we're going to reuse it. And what I have here is my no spill funnel. And as you can see, I'm using various hose adapters, just random stuff I had in the garage, and I just cut it to fit. And that's going to go right inside of that hole right there. There's going to be a cap on it. See, this cap comes off using a 3/8 ratchet. Just unscrew it, and we're going to put the fluid right in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this piece and just try to shove it inside of there. Just like that. And now I have a large convenient place to pour the fluid in. It's going to be even more difficult for me because all the fluid is in this large pan. Now if you're using small quarts, it'll be even easier to get it in here without spilling any. Alright, so I'm done filling up the system, and as you can see, I put the cap back in it. Now sure, you're going to go ahead and lose some of the fluid, so we're going to have to get another quart just to top it off. Because it's a very small hole to get that fluid in, and it keeps wanting to burp, so it keeps trying to push the fluid back out as you're trying to push it in. But I went ahead and hit this up here with some brake parts cleaner already once I was all done. And if you go underneath the car with some brake parts cleaner. Just go ahead and clean off, you know, like the drain plug, the bottom side of the pan, and anywhere where the fluid was leaking off of the side of the pan, dripping off of it. You want all this nice and clean, so in the future if you do develop a leak, you can notice it right away. Alright, so that's gonna be it. All I have to do is put the air box back in it and any other things, you know, the air filter, the engine cover. Put the car back on the ground and take it out for a test drive. Pretty much done here. Alright, so the car has been running for about 10 minutes and I'm just going through the gears here, making sure everything's okay and getting the fluid temperature up. As you can see, we are at, this thing would focus, 98 degree, okay, and it's rising, so that's good. Sensor's working. Now initially when I first got in the car and I turned it on, I was going through the gears, and you know, when I put it into reverse or drive, there was kind of like a loud noise. There was no more harsh engagement. All of that is gone, okay, but there was a noise, and initially I thought maybe there is some damage that was caused from driving with a bad sensor on it for like a year or two. You know, it puts a lot of stress on the internals of the transmission and things like the transmission mounts or the engine mounts, because it's shifting very hard. So by the time you finally get this problem fixed, you may have caused other damage. So I hope that makes sense. But that loud noise I had was only there for like the first 2 or 3 minutes after turning it on, and honestly it could have just been from, you know, the fluid needing to be cycled throughout the transmission. Maybe that's just what was causing it, but it seems to be good now. So let's take it out for an actual test drive. So test driving the car, temperature's up to 114 degree. I've only been in the car for just a few minutes driving it around, but I can already tell that there's no more hard shifting. It's nice and smooth, so that's good. Seems like it's fixed. Alright, so that's gonna be it for this one. If the video helped you, give it a thumbs up, and like always, thanks for watching.